Hello, welcome to this lecture. So in this lecture, we are going to design timber beam. So first we will understand what is timber beam and what are the design considerations for designing this beam. And after that, we will solve an example. So these are the content that we are going to cover in this lecture. So yes, here in this photo, you can see this horizontal member is basically a timber beam and this vertical member is timber column. So we are going to design a timber beam. So first we will see what are the design considerations that are generally followed to design the timber beam. So before we discuss about the timber beam, first of all, we will try to define the beam. So basically, beam is a structural element whose cross-sectional dimensions are less than its length and which support load transversely. So that element is known as beam or joist. So beam is basically an element whose cross-sectional dimensions are less than its length. So that is how we define the beam physically. And in the load mechanism, it supports load transversely, which means uh, now what is the transversely means? It means it supports the load along the axis, which is perpendicular to the longitudinal axis. So that we can see in this diagram also. So you can see the longitudinal axis will be the axis passing through the centroid and the axis running through the length of the beam. So this axis, I mean this axis which is running along the length of the beam, this will be known as longitudinal axis. And the axis perpendicular to this will be known as, I mean, say this is the axis which is perpendicular to the longitudinal axis. So this will be known as transverse axis. So here you can see the direction of the load is parallel to the transverse axis, and that is why we call it that the element which support load transversely. So in this beam, the load is coming along the transverse axis. If the load is coming along the longitudinal axis, then in that case the beam will stretch. But here in this, because of the transverse load, the beam will experience bending, and along the bending it will also experience the effect of shear force. So here talking about the timber beam, so because we are supposed to design timber beam, so timber beam will be the beam which is made of timber. So timber beam can be a beam of single section, it can be of two or more sections. So if a beam consisting two or more timber sections, then that kind of beam will be known as built up beam. So here in case of timber beam, I mean to design the timber beam, we first need to consider in what aspect, in what aspect it can fail because of the application of this load. Now because of this load, what is happening? First thing is beam will try to bend. So it means beam may fail under the bending. The second case is beam may fail under the effect of horizontal shear stress. So we have discussed about the horizontal shear stress in the second lecture also. This horizontal shear stress will also known as longitudinal shear stress. So this longitudinal shear stress is developed because of the complementary property of shear stress. So here, uh, basically, when the beam will bend, so above, say, if I consider this as the long neutral axis, then above neutral axis, the fibers will try to compress. Below the neutral axis, fiber will try to stretch. So because of this compression and tension, the fiber will try to slide along the neutral axis. So this sliding effect is caused because of the effect of longitudinal shear stress. And we have read about the timber that it is composed of a lot of fiber, and these fibers are sticked together with the help of a sticky material called lignin that we have uh, learned in the previous lecture. So first failure of the beam can be because of bending. Second failure can be because of the longitudinal shear stress or horizontal shear stress in case of timber beam. The third failure will be because of the bearing stress. As you can see, this beam is resting on this vertical support. So the area on which this beam will be resting, that area should be sufficient, and that area is known as bearing area. So if the bearing area is not sufficient, then also beam may fail. So the third criteria in which the beam can fail will be the bearing criteria. The fourth criteria will be the deflection. As you can see, because of this load, beam will bend, and this vertical displacement of the beam because of the bending, if this vertical displacement is excessive, then also we will consider the beam is failing. So therefore, total four criteria are there in which the beam can fail. So to design the beam, we have to satisfy these four criteria. So here I have written the timber beams are designed to resist the maximum bending moment caused because of the transverse load. Second is the maximum horizontal shear stress. Third is the maximum stress at bearing. So these are the three major criteria in which beam is designed. And also along with these three, we also need to ensure that maximum deflection in the beam does not exceed the permissible limits. So these are basically the four criteria in which we have to pass or we have to satisfy the design of timber beam. So now we will understand these four criteria one by one, and we will try to understand how we can satisfy the beam under this criteria. So first we will see design of beam for bending moment criteria. Now we know that when uh, the load is coming on the beam, the load cause the bending moment, and against this bending moment beam experience or beam is try to oppose the effect of bending through the resistance, and that resistance is known as moment of resistance. So as you can see in this case, say this is a beam subjected to a UDL. So because of this UDL, the beam will try to bend. Now against this bending, the fiber or the particles of the beam material, they will oppose this bending. So that opposition is basically the resistance. So now if we want to draw the maximum, I mean if we want to draw the bending moment diagram for this beam, we know we can draw like this, and with this diagram we can easily conclude that maximum bending moment will occur at the center, and at the support bending moment is minimum. So basically to design the beam, we know that maximum bending stress will occur where the bending moment will be maximum. So it means at the center bending moment will be maximum, and bending stress will also be maximum. So therefore the bending stress which is caused at the center, it should be less than the permissible bending stress of the timber beam. So if we are able to satisfy this condition, then we say that beam is safe in the bending moment criteria. So we will try to understand this concept more. Now here, to calculate the bending moment and moment of resistance, we can use the bending equation. So either we calculate bending moment by using the normal relation we have learned in the structure mechanics course, or we can use the bending moment equation to calculate this bending moment. So we can use this equation also, and in this equation we know that m is moment of resistance or maximum bending moment, I is the moment of inertia, f is the bending stress, y is the distance from neutral axis to the point where we are required to find out bending moment, sorry, bending stress, and E is the Young's modulus of elasticity of the material, and R is the radius of curvature. So these six terms are there, which forms the bending equation. Now, to get the value of m, we can use these two terms. And to get the value of m, we can simply write m as f into I by y. And also, to get the maximum value of bending moment, y should be maximum. And I by y max is actually known as z. And this z is actually the section modulus. So this is the simple equation with which we can find out the maximum bending moment. So if we know the bending stress, if we know the section modulus, we can easily calculate the maximum bending moment. Or if we don't know what is the bending stress, then m value can also be calculated by the simple I mean, if we have the load value, if we have the length, then we can simply calculate the reaction. And after that, we can work out the bending moment at the center. So these two methods are there with which we can find out the maximum bending moment. But there is a catch. This equation cannot be used in case of timber beam. Now, why? Because in the second lecture, we have discussed the assumptions that we generally consider in the derivation of this equation. And in those assumptions, one assumption was that material is assumed to be isotropic. So to work out this equation, the material should be isotropic. But we know that timber is highly anisotropic, and therefore this equation cannot be used directly. So therefore we have to do some modification. So in the modification, generally what we do is we apply a factor to this equation, and that factor is known as form factor. So we will multiply this equation with form factor, and then only we will be able to find out the value of m for timber beam. So therefore, the importance of form factor becomes uh, very important in this case. So therefore, once we get this form factor, we can easily modify this equation, and the modified equation we obtained is FB into Z into K naught. Now, M is the moment of resistance or maximum bending moment of the beam. FB is the bending stress, permissible bending stress. Z is the section modulus. And with this, we have added one more factor, one more term, which is called the form factor. Now, this form factor is actually dependent on the dimensions of the timber beam. Now, in the dimensions, specifically on the depth, this K naught value actually dependent on the depth of the beam. So here we have M is maximum bending moment, K naught is form factor depending on the shape of cross section. So in the shape of cross section, specifically the depth. FB is the permissible bending stresses in the extreme fiber of beam, and Z is the section modulus, which is I by Y. And in this, I is the moment of inertia of the cross section of beam about the centroidal axis, and Y is the distance in mm. So with the help of this diagram, we can understand where we are. So if this is B, this is D, and if this is the neutral axis, then also the value of y will be measured from the neutral axis to the extreme fiber, because we are supposed to find out the maximum bending stress, and that maximum bending stress will occur at the topmost fiber or the lowermost fiber. So therefore we always measure y max, and y max is if the whole depth is d, then it will be d by 2, and I is the moment of inertia about the neutral axis, which will be bd cube by 12. And if we are able to find out z, z will become bd cube by 12 divided by uh, d by 2. So ultimately solving this, we get bd square by 6. So z for a rectangular section is bd square by 6. So so we know that For rectangular section, I is BDQ by 12. Now in this BDQ by 12, B is the width of beam, D is the depth of beam. Now in the IS code that we are going to use for designing this timber beam, uh, that IS code I have shown you in the previous lecture also, that is 883, IS 883. So this code is generally used to design the uh, beam also. So in the IS code, it is mentioned that the width of beam, which is B value, B is the breadth of beam in mm, and width of beam shall not be less than 50 mm or 1/50th of the effective span. So for example, if this is the beam and if this is the effective span, then this will be the width of beam. So this width of beam shall not be less than 50 mm or 1/50th of the effective span, whichever is greater. So this is one of the standard which is given for the beam. So whenever we try to decide the width of beam, we follow this procedure which is recommended by the IS code. Then second thing is, what is effective span? Effective span is basically the length which is measured from the center of the support. I am just making again the diagram. For example, this is the beam and this is the support on both sides. So center to center of the support will actually be the effective span. And then talking about the D. So once we finalize the value of B, then we also are required to finalize the value of D also. So IS code has recommended that D is the depth of beam in mm and it shall not be more than 3 times of width without lateral stiffening. So basically, for example, if we have B value as say 100, then D value should be less than or equals to 3 times of B or 300. So value of D shall not exceed 300 mm in this case. Similarly, if we have B value 150, then D value shall not exceed 450 mm. So this is how we decide the B and D value as per IS code recommendations. So that we will see when we will solve the example. There we will see how we are going to select the value of B and D. Now, talking about the form factor, how do we calculate this form factor? So as I said, this form factor is dependent on the depth of beam. And if if we talk about the rectangular beam, because in most of the cases, the beams are basically of rectangular cross section. So for rectangular cross section, if the depth of beam is less than or equals to 300 mm, then the value of K naught will be 1. If the thickness, if the depth of beam is less than or equals to 300 mm, then K naught value will be 1, which means if the depth of timber beam is less than or equals to 300 mm, we consider the timber as isotropic. This formula will work. But if the depth exceeds 300 mm, in that case, we have to calculate K naught. So K naught will be referred to as K3 in this case if the D value exceeds, and K3 can be calculated by this relation. And this relation is given in IS 883. I will show you that in this code later. So in this formula, D is the depth of beam and these are the constants. So using this relation, we can easily calculate the value of K3, and then we can put this K3 value in the equation of moment, and we can calculate the reduced bending capacity of the beam. Now, if we have box beam or I-beam, box beam are like the hollow beams. Similarly, if we have I-beams like this, in that case, how do we find out the K value? So in that case, form factor K naught will be equivalent to K4, and K4 can be calculated by the relation shown here. So we can use this equation to calculate the value of K naught, which is K4 in this case. And this is calculated when we have the built up beam, when we have the built up beam. So here we have one more variable which we are required to find out, which is the y value. Now, how do we find out this y value? This y value is dependent on the dimensions of this box column and I beams. So y can be calculated by this relation. Now, in this relation also, there are another new terms, P1 and Q1. Now, what is P1 and what is Q1, that we will see. P1 is basically the ratio of thickness of the compression flange to the depth of beam. Now, there is a new term arises, which is flange. Now, in case of box beam or I-beam, the horizontal component, like in this case, I-beam, this is the horizontal component. This is also the horizontal component. So these horizontal components are known as flange. And in this, the vertical component, it is known as web. So P1 is basically the ratio of thickness of compression flange to the depth of beam. So generally, if this is the neutral axis, then we know that above neutral axis, there will be compression. So on the compression side, the flange will be known as compression flange. And below neutral axis, this flange will be known as tension flange. So if the thickness of flange is D1 and overall depth of this I-beam is say D, so this ratio will be known as P1. Similarly, Q1, what is Q1? Q1 is ratio. This is basically the ratio of total thickness of web or webs to overall width of beam. So here it says this is the thickness of web. Say if I represent this as T1 and overall depth, sorry, overall width of flange, it will be T. So T1 by T is basically the ratio Q1. So I have made a proper diagram of this. So you can see here. So these are the D1, T1, overall depth for box column and for I-beam. So with these dimensions, we can easily calculate the value of P1 and Q1. So this is how we calculate form factor in case if we have built up beams. So as I said, built up beams are the beams which are composed of two or more sections. So in case of I-beam, you can see there are three sections, 1, 2, and 3. Similarly, in box column, we have four sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are composed of more than two sections. So that is why they are called built up beams. But here in this lecture, we will restrict ourselves to design only the single section beam. Now, till now we have discussed how do we find out bending moment using the bending equations, and then we introduced with the form factor. Now, beside this form factor, how do we calculate this form factor for rectangular sections, for built up sections? Now here we have to understand what is the condition with which we can say that our beam is safe in bending. So the condition is this. It says for beam to be safe in bending, for our beam to be safe in bending, FAB should be less than FB. Now what is FAB? FAB is the actual bending stress and FB is the permissible bending stress. Now this value of FB we can find out using the table which I have shown you in the previous lecture also. So that table is generally used to get the values like permissible bending stresses, permissible shear stresses. So I will show you that table later. So FB can be found from the table. FAB is the actual bending stress. So for example, if we have this beam and if it is subjected to a load W, so this W load will cause a bending stress in this beam. So we know that maximum bending will occur at the center. So the bending stress at the center of the span will be termed as FAB, and this FAB should be less than permissible bending stress which is given in the table of the IS code. So that is the condition that we have to satisfy, that this actual bending stress caused due to this load should be less than permissible bending stress given in the table. So if we are able to satisfy this condition, we say that our beam is safe in bending criteria. So we will continue our discussion in the next part. Thank you.